You guys that are still on the line are super troopers. I'm going to give you some really valuable links at the end, I promise. And I hope you get a lot from it, even though we've had some troubles in the beginning here. Okay, moving on. I've talked a lot about this. There's just the last thing. The last thing I want to say about what I wish I knew earlier was never think it's a good idea to save $50 to $100 by taking red-eye flights that have 3 stops and 12-hour layovers, that have you sitting in airports in foreign countries where nobody speaks English and you end up laying on the cold floor. I'm here. Okay, good. I'm just going to keep going on, and hopefully there's some good stuff. Okay, moving on to accommodation and flights. So now what we want to do is I want to give you guys some of my best tips with regards to accommodation and flights, okay? So my big tip is never to book more than 3 to 5 nights when you're going to any place new, okay? The reason for this is manyfold. First of all, online, hotels, B&Bs, airlines. Hey, Gary, just close out the other window. So you just want to be able to have the new window, the new AMA open. Okay? So with regards to accommodation flights, like I said, okay, 3 to 5 nights. So the reason why I want to do this is twofold, okay? If you get to a place that you buy a place, you book a place online, booking.com, agoda.com, and what tends to happen is they show you what they want you to see, okay? They will often, it might be not what you expected or not what you thought. So the reason why I say that it's important for you to only book these many nights is because you want to be able to change your mind. So what I do is I book 3 to 5 nights, and then when I get there, I'll look for a cheaper place. Okay? I do this for 2 reasons. As I mentioned before, I want to be able to stay for really long periods of time. I want to be able to take a flight and spend 2 to 3 months in place. And if I'm going to be staying for a long period of time, I want to get the best deals on accommodations. Now, I don't play the credit card points, mileage games. I just fly to a place, book the best deal that I can find on one of these apps. I'm going to send you the link after. And I book a couple of nights. And then what I do is I walk around. So what happens is, especially in countries, let's say like Asia and other places, they have a low and a high season. Okay, the low season, you can get places for a lot cheaper than the high season, of course. So what I do is I book the place and I walk around and I see if I can get a better place. A better place might be closer to the beach. A better place might be it's cheaper. A better place might be that it's closer to some of the events and some of the like stores or places that I want to look and I want to shop. So then what I do is I also done something where I booked a place online using, let's say, TripAdvisor's recommendations, and then I'll often ask the guy that runs the place, hey, I'm finding these deals online. I'd love to know if I'm able to get a better rate. And so what happens then is that people often will accommodate that. So they'll give you the better rate. And as I said, in low season in many countries, you will find places around that don't even exist on many of these online booking places. Or when you go there, they'll say, you know what, if you don't take AC, of course, it costs them a lot of money. They're used to foreigners who will just blast AC all day long. And so I've often taken places that don't have AC, and that's will end up saving a lot of money. Something else that you want to do when you're booking online hotels and online flights is, do you guys know how to use the incognito window? So for instance, in Chrome, if you click Control-Shift-N, I don't know what's called an incognito window. Has anybody ever heard of this before? If you use Firefox, there's probably an alternative, but in Chrome, it's called an incognito window. Just click yes if you have ever heard of this little trick. So what starts to happen is the airlines and the hotels, they will start to track where you are and your cookies and your browser. And some of the airlines will actually start to bump the price as they notice that you're looking on the same page over and over. And so what you want to do is you want to go look for your flights, see what you want, then open an incognito window and look for the same flight. And there are times when I've noticed that the flight price will have dropped. And so they end up increasing the price while you're searching because they know they can tell that you've been doing that. So yes, the incognito tab, you do your searching in your main, you can, and then you go and use the incognito tab for actually booking. So that's a tip for you to get, to watch out for when you're booking flights. Absolutely, yes, Angelina, that is what you're going to be doing. And yes, okay, cool, he's using different computer. That's really smart. So, again, with accommodation, my goal, right? So when I asked you your why, what's your why, and what are you willing to sacrifice versus there's some things I'm willing to sacrifice and there's some things I'm not willing. So when I was in Bali, it was okay to not have an AC. There was a fan, there was beautiful open windows and doors, and yeah. So just to let you guys know, I have turned off the sharing. I will share the slides afterwards with you guys. But I think that is affecting with everybody on at the same time. I think just bandwidth-wise, it wasn't working. Yeah, Chris, I think is correct in that. So I will share my slides later. Thanks for staying on and being patient. I'm even considering maybe re-recording this and then sending it to you guys as a later watch webinar. But for now, I'm just going to keep going, sharing the information. You're here. We may as well party. And so sorry you can't see anything other than maybe my my picture there, but we'll keep going. All right, so I think that's probably some of my best tips. The reason why I need to do the 3 to 5 night rule is because, so for example, there's often things that you don't know about a place. So for instance, in Thailand, I had no idea until I got there. I'd booked a 4-star hotel. I got a really good deal on like a Groupon or something. And when I showed up, I lay down on the bed and I thought to myself, does this bed even have a mattress on it? Because it feels like I'm sleeping on a baseboard. And I looked and it was totally a mattress, but their mattresses are extremely hard. And I booked 5 nights. And so even at that point, 5 nights was too long. And I was like, crap. And so I went and asked them, and they were able to find like a pillow top because they had some people complain, I guess. But at the end of the day, my new goal is when I'm in Thailand is I book a place for a couple of nights based on TripAdvisor's reviews of people who say that they have really comfortable beds. And then what I do is if I really like the place, I'll book longer. And if I don't like the place, I'll walk around, and I literally walk in. They're advertising like some great rate or whatever. I walk in, I sit down on the bed, and then I'm like, yeah, no, not staying here. So that's the reason why you don't want to be booking too long, because there might just be something that you can't plan for. The last example I'm going to use is I was in Singapore. I was standing at a crosswalk, and it was a really long crosswalk, and I started talking to this guy that was there and discovered that he had booked 30 days at a place, that was horrible, horrendous. He'd prepaid everything. The guy wouldn't give him his money back. And so this poor guy had to like live in the mall and literally only go home to sleep. So don't do that. Don't make that mistake. That's also in, you know, I've never really made that mistake, but it's definitely one you'll wish you knew earlier if you don't apply it. Okay, so moving on to money matters. If you can hear and all is well and you're still with us, please give me a big yes and let me know you're still with us. We've dropped about half of the people. You guys are the troopers. All right, and yes, so Pri has noticed here in the comments that it's best to book on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. Yes, prices can go up, you know, obviously last minute, but also on the weekends. So, you know, play around. I'm going to give you guys a link to a website that I use to really make it easy for you to look at date ranges and locations and base that off price. So don't worry so much. You're going to get a link right after this webinar with all the tips and links. Okay, so money matters. Giving you context of how much might this cost, and like giving you guys some context. So, for instance, a few years ago, and glad to hear you guys are all on. A few years ago, I was in college. I didn't have a ton of money. I was living on like $500 or $600 a month. My parents were supporting me with about $100 when I was in college, dollars a month. And because I was a student in the US, I was really limited to when and how I could work. So if you're a foreign student in the US, you may only work 20 hours a week on your university campus. And good luck to you if you're going to make more than, you know, $7 or $8 an hour. So, you know, I wasn't living on a lot, but I had an opportunity to go to Europe to do an internship. And I worked out that I could do it really thrifty and spend like 2.5 months in Europe at the time. This was about 6 years ago, I'd say. And I was able to do that all by keeping my home expenses low. So I didn't have a car. I didn't have a long lease apartment. I literally moved every semester in college. I'm not exaggerating. I was there for quite a while. I literally moved every semester in the quest to not get into long leases. And because I wanted to save money. So in the area that I was in the States, in the summers, the rent would have become half because a lot of students are not taking classes. And so I arranged my literal US college around living and studying in the summers and the falls. And then I would leave in the winter. I'd go and work, or I'd go travel. And so I literally arranged my college experience around living in the US during summers because everything became cheaper. And then when I went to Europe, for example, I was able to only double. And as I said, I was living on a very low amount of money. But now Europe, of course, is more expensive for many people. But if you have a job and if you are able to make money while you work, you know, spending $1,000 a month in Europe is actually not that much money. So how I did that was everything from, we never stayed in hotels. I was able to share rooms with some of the other interns that went over to Europe. We pretty much, if you look at your travel experience as, okay, what would I do when I'm at home? Now, you're not going to eat every night and every lunch out of a restaurant. And this is the ways that travel becomes very expensive, right? So people live in hotels, they live in restaurants, they're doing all these fancy, expensive things. And so the way I look at it is I only need a place that's clean and that's decent to sleep, okay? Because when I'm going to be out in the day. My goal is not to be in a hotel. So I get a clean place. It doesn't have to be fancy. I typically get food separately because if you do food in a bundle with the rates, this is often going to cost you more money. So so I would go to the grocery store and I'd go there, and that's how I would organize my my food. Okay. Please let me know if the sound clears up again for you guys. I'm just going to keep going and hoping for some of you it clears up again. Okay, so one thing I want to say on this note within the accommodation and money matters is that I guarantee you, if you think there's somebody that you know that lives somewhere in the world that has said to you, like, you know what, you should totally come visit me in X. So there's somebody on this call, Angelina, right now, and there are many people that have said, like, hey, I would love for you to come and visit. Now, a lot of people, I've told many people, hey, when you're in South Africa, come visit. I might not have a place for you to stay, but I'm happy to show you around or give you advice. And so many people, they tend to, never take people up on that offer. So I guarantee you, whether it's in another city or whether it's in another country, there is somebody that would be willing to help you and put you up or give you advice on local stuff. And so you need to look at travel as that. Like, you're not going as a tourist. You're going as somebody who wants to live and work abroad and from anywhere. I'm sorry for those of you who are saying the sound is choppy. I hope it's going to just naturally come right. Let me know if it's still a problem in a couple of minutes. I'm definitely thinking I'm going to have to redo this and probably record with nobody on, and record it on my computer and then send you guys, for being so awesome, the Jacqueline only version, and then you guys can just watch it. So it'll be more of a pre-recorded video. So I appreciate you being on the call and participating, and sorry about this. So I'm just going to keep going, and if it drops out, I apologize. You can stay on the line, or you can abort and come back another day. But for those of you that stay on, I'm going to answer your questions specifically. So, all right. The other thing you want to do is consider your transportation. So some people, they'll look for a really cheap place to stay, but then they don't consider transportation. So if you're living really, really far away from the things you want to be doing, of course, it's going to put you up in taxi fees or tuk-tuk fees, or the train or the bus. And even if you save money by going on the train or the bus, and that would be my recommendation, is that, the travel time. So if it's going to take you an hour to go anywhere, because you're staying super far out of the town, of course you gotta count that into it and figure out if it's worth it. Traveler's insurance, money matters. So I highly recommend you guys getting really good traveler's insurance. I'm going to send you a link to the best traveler's insurance that I found. I actually had an experience when I was in Asia, and I got really injured, and they paid for business class back home because that's what the doctor recommended, and they paid back all of my doctor bills when I was in country. So within like, I think it was 4 days of me letting them know, I was able to get my money back and get flown home. And so I'll be sending you guys a link to that too. I highly recommend it. It's pretty much better insurance. I have better insurance when I'm traveling than I do when I'm home. And so that's really, really funny, ironically. So I'm going to send you guys a link to that when you're traveling. Make sure you're covered. You don't want to have that worry or that fear, okay? And I got wheeled across an airport through all the checkpoints in a wheelchair. So don't go and injure yourself on purpose now. But if something does happen to you, you want to be certain. And so I guess that's the thing. There's this quote that I typed earlier for some of you guys. It's one of my favorite quotes by a guy named Osho, and he says that basically, we need to not fear uncertainty and insecurity, but we need to embrace it, okay? And so what I want to say is that there are things that you can embrace, uncertainty of not knowing exactly where you're going and what you're doing and what you're going to be doing the next day, but let there be some certainty, right? Let there be the certainty of, if something happens, I'm covered. Let there be the certainty of, if there's a problem, then I have backup plans. Okay, so let me know, guys. Let me know if you're still with me. Send me a hell yes if you're still with me here, so that I'm not talking to thin air for the next 30 minutes or so. But I'm going to keep going until I hear that, because there is a Google Hangouts does have a 20-second delay. There is a warning when you do any kind of Google Hangout that there's a 20-second delay. So moving on. Okay, so legal and visa. A reason why it's important to obey this is because you don't want to have a situation where you're going to be deported. So I don't know all the details about the story with Chris Guillebeau getting deported from one of the countries he went to, but for many of you, you've probably heard of him. He's the guy that went to every country in the entire world. And so you want to obey the legal, the visa situation, okay? So don't do anything like that you wouldn't do in your own country, especially legally, right? So if you want to drive and rent a car in another country, you're going to need to have a driver's license. And don't be stupid again. So don't drive and drink. Don't ride a motorcycle when you don't own a motorcycle and you don't have a motorcycle license at home. So this is where people get into trouble, right? They may have insurance, they're being smart, but then they go and ride a motorcycle drunk without a license, and that'll end up putting you in jail, or you're going to not be covered by the insurance if you have an accident, okay? So what you need to do in that sense then is you need to make sure you have the proper license, okay? And this cost me more money because one of the trips that I did not have a bike license, and I would have saved so much money if I had had a bike license. But in the end of the day, I had to spend a lot more money on taxis and tuk-tuks and trains. And so you need to, that's why I would say this is also one of the things I wish I knew earlier, is that do your research. So I'm going to send you guys a link to a service I use called Fancy Hands. You can get 50% off your first month. And what this will do is this will allow you to get other people to do research for you. So what I do is I have them look for good flights or legal reasons or legal things that I want to know about. So for instance, many countries in the world require South Africans to have require you to have a special visa, and it's really hard to know, excuse me, what that entails. And so there's some research that needs to be done. And so instead of me spending hours and hours doing this research, I have somebody else do it, and then I just read it, okay? So this is something that I learned as a businessman, or businesswoman, I guess, and have other people do the research for you, okay? And you can just read it later. So give me a second here. Jesse, are you still screen sharing? The other really, really important thing for you to do would be many countries in the world have, especially for US citizens and British citizens, you want to be able to figure out what the rules are. So some countries like Bali require everybody to pay $25 when you enter, and you have to have that in dollars and ready to pay when you get there. Then you, just going to take a deep breath. There have been a lot of technical difficulties here. Whew, but there's still some of you on, so that's good. This is all interesting, fun lessons. The lesson I've learned today is don't try and host a webinar from South Africa. I will probably just pre-record any videos or anything I'm going to do in the future on this topic. You know what's funny is, though, taking a side note, is that I have coaching calls with clients all around the world. I do screen shares, like it's never been a problem. So I'm just wondering, I don't exactly, you know, I'm not super, super duper technical. I'm a little bit technical, a little bit of a nerd. But I'm just wondering if somehow my laptop / internet is spazzing out because of there being many people on it. So that's good to know. I can be a coach and I can be a consultant from South Africa, but I cannot be a Hangout webinar host. So that is my lesson of the day. And sorry for those of you that it's wasted some of your time and made you be patient, but I will do my best to make it up to those of you and make sure you get some good value from this. I hope that happens here today. And I'm going to stay on till we've answered all these questions. So I've shared some of the stuff, all of this valuable stuff for you. Okay, so let's see here. You know, a lot of people now book all their flights online. I like to do this because it allows me to quickly and easy change my plans, that I don't have to go through a travel agent. So what I once got a flight with a travel agent, and what I found was that to make a change, right? If it was holiday or a weekend, like, and they didn't answer, like, you're out of luck. But what I have found is it's still good to have a relationship with travel agents. So whether you use them for some flights where you know you don't need to chop and change, and you develop a relationship with them, right? Because they have a lot of information, and they can often help you and give you information quicker than anybody else. And so I kind of have that situation with one where I've flown with them on some flights, so we have a relationship, and so they're obviously making commission on the flights that you book, but I don't book them for everything, and so I don't tell them every time I travel. But if I ever have a question about something, I go to them. The other thing that you can do is with travel agencies is I often start my flights and searches this way. I'll actually just email an agent, and I'll be like, hey, what's the best price you can get for me from Cape Town to London, or from London to Phuket, or whatever it may be. And then they send me, and I say, I want 3 different iterations of this flight. Like, I want to know it on this airline and this airline, because let's say I have miles with this airline, or I like really want to fly this other airline. And so they have all this data, right? They can do this really, really fast. And so then they come back to me with a price. And so often that's a great way to really easily do my own searches, because I know, okay, the best flight price they can get me is X. Can I beat that? And so again, I'm going to send you guys a link to Fancy Hands. You get a 50% off your first month whenever you decide to use this. I'll just email Fancy Hands and say, hey, can you beat this price? And they often have connections, and they can do that. So yes, that's a little bit of hustling. But often then one of the agents, I'll be like, okay, you gave me the best price, or hey, agent B gave me a better price. Can you beat that? And then they will. And if you forward them and say, look, agent B gave me X price, and you let agent A know, very often they're willing to drop the price. So that's a little tip there. And going back to visas, each country has their own rules, but each country has their own rules depending on where you are a resident. So if you're a resident in Peru, the rules of your entry into Bali, I think Bali is quite standard, but let's say your entry into Malaysia or Thailand or London is going to be different to my entry into one of those countries. So I'm gonna send you guys a screenshot. So like, this is something I actually just found on Wikipedia, and it's super useful because I can scan down there and see exactly which countries I'm allowed a visa, which countries I'm not, which ones I have to pay for, which ones are entry visas. So you need to go and do that research based on your own research. I did send a link in the chat. I hope it shows up. If it doesn't, it will be as part of the packet of stuff I give you at the end, the link to the awesome, cool websites and stuff and tools. But there probably is something like this, and that's just on Wikipedia. It's really cool. So I feel like that was something really, really cool. I may even just screen share here. I don't even want to risk it with the sound. So, okay, moving along. Okay, so what I wanted to say is, if the rule is 30 days, like you're allowed to go to Thailand for 30 days with no visa, then it's really, really important that you don't break that rule, okay? Because what happens is you decide to, okay, cool, I'll leave on the 30th day, but now if there's a weather issue, if there is a flight delay, if you got sick or there's a problem, what's going to happen? Now you've overstayed your visa. This has never happened to me, but I know that there's a booth in many customs as you leave. You will be fined. And in some countries like the US and first world countries, you are really jeopardizing your future entry into those countries. So you do not want to wait too close. I usually leave at least a week before whatever it is the rule is. So if it's 30 days, I'll leave after like, 21 days, or if it's 60 days, I'll give myself some leeway. In the US, I was hardcore. I obeyed every single rule. I had a student visa. They used to warn us at the student advisory that if we went over 20 hours of work, we would be deported. So most foreign international students, if you ever meet them, they're living in fear, basically. They're living in fear of deportation, even though they're following all the rules. When I went to Europe, I was on a travel visa because I wasn't working in the country. I was doing research. I was just traveling. With regards to Asia and Australia, because at that point I had my own business and I was working online, doing marketing consulting and later coaching, I wasn't working in country. I wasn't getting paid in those countries, currencies. I was working for clients that weren't even based in those countries. So this may be a fine line. And I think as many, many new people begin to work online and become location independent, they may become more strict with these rules. But as I read the information on these visas, for me at least, I felt no problem having a tourist visa for Asia and Australia, even though I was running my own little online thing. Let's say it again, because I was not soliciting work from Australians. I was not working for any of those people there, and I was not getting paid there at all. So I was not taking away work or jobs, and that's kind of a big reason why. So you're going to have to consult your own lawyer, attorney, or read read up yourself on it and make the best decisions for yourself, because there can be consequences, like I said, fines, deportation, being banned in the future. If you got to figure out what you're willing to risk. Again, each country has their own rules for their country, and then based on where you come from. All right, moving on to the relationships section. So I'm not going to BS you guys. This is the most difficult thing when it comes to working from anywhere, right? Especially for me, and maybe not for everybody. If you're not close with your family, or if you don't have a boyfriend or pets or kids or anything, it's probably going to be a bit easier. I did have pets that died. I was young when I left. I was 18. There were pets that died. Although been single for most of the past, it's not super conducive to a long-term romantic relationship if you're always in a different country and moving around. But definitely with family, I would say it's going to require a lot of work on your part, because out of sight, out of mind. Now, of course, your family is not like forgotten about you, but their lives go on. They're busy, right? And now you're in another country, and it's expensive for them to call you, or although lucky for us, Skype and email and all these things, and FaceTime and WhatsApp, that didn't exist 10 years ago, and I probably spent about $5,000 in over the 12 years or the 10 years that I was traveling, because I would buy a calling card every month, and it cost me somewhere in the vicinity of $50 to $100. But I was willing to make that sacrifice to keep my relationships going. There are times when I felt sad nobody calls me, but it was really expensive to call me, when I was in the States from a third world country paying, $1 a minute, whereas I was able to hustle and find these awesome calling cards for a couple of cents. So do what works for you. I would send postcards. I would send birthday gifts. It cost me a lot of money, but it was really important for me to keep those relationships going. Although there was a very important lesson that my mom tried to teach me when I was a teenager, and it took me a long time to actually learn this lesson, is that she would say, friends will come and go, but family is always there. Now, I know that for some people who don't have good family situations that, this may not be relevant. But in my case, I have a great family and I've had great friends. But when I heard this first, I was like, nah, whatever. Me and my friends are so close. But as in any transition in life, you're moving to a new place. You're just transitioning, right, from out of high school into college, and out of college, you assume, you think you're going to make time, and those friends are going to stay as important to you are now in your life. But transitions in life change that. And so as much as there are many relationships that I used to have that I wish I still had, right, and that you could say it's a result of the travel, it's really has been, I would say, more of a result of me going through different transitions and phases in my life. And so just accepting that and then deciding how much, how important certain relationships are for you. So I'm going to be sending you a link also to something else, a tool that I found that I've used to like help that a little bit, to not let certain relationships fall through the cracks, both personally and professionally. I'll share a story that was difficult for me to learn, but something that I learned from a friend, which was really true. So I had a really close friend in the States. I had a lot of international foreign friends. And the one guy, he had graduated earlier than me, and he moved back to France, where he was from, for about a year. And I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I said to him one day, I said, is it hard when going home and, your younger siblings, like my younger brother, when I left, he was 7, and I was about to move home and he was 17. And I was a bit scared, like, I haven't seen him for so long. And he said to me, it was like, I thought it would be hard, but when I got back, this young sibling of mine that we would have, even if we grew up together, right, I was going to be living another life. There was like 10 years between us. And so now he's like, now when I move back, we have this really awesome, like, adult relationship with each other. And so I kind of experienced that when I moved back. My brother, he was 17, and we're one sitting out on the porch having lunch, and I'd come home and I'd send him cards and I'd talk to him on the phone. I did my best to keep in touch, but I said to him, like, what do you remember of me? And, he said something that was really hard to hear. And he said, well, I don't really know you. And I moved back to South Africa kind of to have a bit of a base. And I thought, you know what, like, he was young when I left. I knew him. I'd kept in touch, but he was young, and I couldn't expect him to, remember all these things. And so I've spent time now as I've been back to do things with him. And we have a great relationship now. Yes, it's different. Would it have been cool for us to grow up together? Maybe we would have not been as close. I don't know, right? And so this is definitely a challenge, right? Pets, I've chosen now to not have pets, even though I would love to have a dog. Right now, it would be unfair for me to have one to burden others, or to have that pet be juggled around. So you're going to have to make that decision. Maybe you have a mom or a friend or somebody who can take care of it, and you need to figure out if you're going to be able to do that. And with regards to kids, though, I don't have any kids, but I do just want to say, if you have kids and you're passionate about traveling, I have friends that do this. They're currently in the UK. 2 years ago, they were living in the Philippines, and I visited them there, actually. They have 3 kids now. They're all under 10 years old, and they make it work. It's not easy. I've flown with them, but they make it work, and their kids grew up with that lifestyle. So if you want kids, and if I have kids in the future, they're definitely going to be used to planes, and travel will be a part of their lifestyle. But their culture, they'll have so much more exposure to cultures, and have a really awesome, like, upbringing, right? Even though it's going to be hard for you as a parent, especially if they're really young. As I mentioned, dating can be really tricky, although apps and online dating, I've used those. I wouldn't advise on Tinder too much, but there are these online dating apps that when you're in another country, it shows you in those countries. So I've gone on dates in pretty much almost everywhere I've been, except Asia, because everybody will hit on you there when they see your, like, they look like you have money. And my tip there is, when you're in Asia, especially if you're a solo female traveler in certain countries, people will always ask you, like, where's your husband? Where's your boyfriend? This is a tip for all the ladies. You need to be okay with lying. You need to be okay with saying, oh, he's at the hotel, or he's coming later, or he's around the corner, or I'm meeting him later. When it comes to people asking personal private information, this happens a lot in Asia. They'll always be asking you this. You gotta lie, and you just gotta, just do it for your safety. I had a tight situation once where I had to run away from somebody at like midnight across an island, right? That's a story for another time. That's probably the most scared I've ever been, and maybe I'll do a video separately for any women. You can send me an email if you're interested in that video. So I just want to touch on the post here. Is everybody still with me? Send me a one-word adjective letting me know how you're feeling about the webinar so far. We're coming to a wrap on the pre-prepared stories. I've got 2 more topics I want to share, and then I'm going to take your questions. So send me something, let me know you're still here. And again, you guys are rock stars and warriors for hanging on through all of this technical difficulties. And honestly, if you're still here, like, that is a really good sign. I want to give you a high five, because you got to learn to roll with the punches if you're going to have this lifestyle. And so thank you for that. And I'm going to pause for a second until I see that there's some response on the other end. Okay, wee! Thank you, Chris. Aloha. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to keep going on. I'm 20 seconds in the future, so it takes a little bit for me to get responses. Okay, dokes. So a lot of you, this is one of the biggest voted questions. How to become location independent, okay? And so, how do you become location independent? So I'm going to share a little bit of my story and like the mindsets that you need to accept, okay? So, and somebody else asked, like, what's the type of work you need to do? How do you stay productive? I'm going to share some of those stories. So, as in life, any transition is difficult, and is hard because you've never done it before, mate, perhaps. So transitioning from an employee to a location independent, it's funny because I read the 4-Hour Work Week a couple of years ago, and as I'm reading it, I thought, holy crap, this is what I did. This is what I did to move from a full-time office job. There was a lot of flexibility in my office job. I could show up when I wanted, late morning, because I'd often do late night work. My boss was super flexible. But, I basically, I would just advise many of you to go and read that, right? So he's going to share, Tim Ferriss will share, stories of people who have done it. I'm going to share a little bit of what happened to me. So I actually had a life challenge that was thrown my way. I got really, really ill, just 4 months after getting this full-time job. I'd been an intern, however, and so I'd already proved my value. And so this is something I want to say really, really, like, from my heart, because I really do feel like it's the key to success. Not Tim Ferriss, what's his name now? Tony Robbins. So his new book, Money, Master the Game, is brilliant. If you guys haven't yet read it, I got the audiobook, it'll blow your mind. But he says somewhere in the beginning of that book that you will never lack for money if you understand that when you add more value to somebody than anybody else. So if you can add more value to people than anybody else, you will never be in lack. Why? Because when you can become so valued, so valuable to somebody, so priceless, so trusted, they're going to want you to be happy. They're going to want to make sure that they can keep you, right? They're not going to want to lose you. And so I would say that was probably the key in the transition. However, there was this life circumstance that happened to me that forced me into the situation that I probably wouldn't have done. So I got really ill, and I literally remember driving home from the doctor. So I got glandular fever or mono. I'm sure some of you are going to chuckle at that. Like a few months after graduating college. And I remember driving home and had the worst experience of my life. Like, I'd been sick already for a few weeks and couldn't have figured out what was wrong. And I went to the doctor and got the test. And I was driving home, and I decided, okay, I've already been lying in my bed for like weeks, and I was staying in this cheap place, so the mattress wasn't great. And I drove to the Walmart, and I got like this full length body pillow, and I stocked up on food because the doctor was maybe like, yeah, you're going to be in bed for a few weeks. And as I was driving home, I'm not joking, my car broke down and my phone died, and a policeman even pulled over to help me. And he was like, can I call anybody? And I was like, the only number I've memorized is my family in Africa, and I doubt you can call that. So it literally took me like an hour and a half my car was overheating. And so I would drive for like 2 minutes and then pull over. And by the time I got to my friends, I couldn't even make it home. Like, the car was overheating so much, and I didn't want to like super ruin the engine. And so I pulled up to a friend's house and walked in and bawled my eyes out. I was like, I got mono, and my car broke down, and they're going to fire me because I'm not going to be able to go to work. And then if I can't go to work, they're going to deport me. And I was just like invisible scripts, right? Just like scripts running, like all the fears coming out. And I was like, I don't know, I'm going to get home. And what I ended up doing is my friends were like, it's okay, it's going to be fine. And they fed me. And I called a friend, and he took me home. And I literally didn't leave that apartment after that. I think it was 3 weeks. I didn't even take the trash out. I was that ill, right? So my boss had already known I was a little bit sick. And as I said, I'd made myself invaluable to him. I'd already proved to him that the work I was doing was super useful to them. How I even got that job in the first place is a story for another day. But I'm a big believer in don't wait for opportunities to come to you, create them. And that's literally what I did. So I'll probably put something together on that because a lot of people always want to know that story. And so I called him and I said, look, I'm really ill. And the doctor said I need to probably stay in bed for weeks. And he's just like, well, work from home for a bit and keep in touch. And he really trusted me, right? He would just give me his credit card and say, take care of it. So that was the level of trust that I'd worked myself into before this even happened. And so I literally worked from my bed. I would wake up, I would work for like 12 hours, and then I would sleep for like the rest of the day. And I would literally was watching movies, sleeping, and working. That is it for the better part of like 3 weeks. And then they would call me some days and they'd say, what did you do today? Like, or did you do something today? Not in like a, did you do any work today? But like curious, like tone of voice. And I was like, oh yeah, I did this. And I was like, wow. And they're like, because the phone wouldn't stop ringing. So I was doing marketing for them, online marketing. And literally in those proceedings, so for those 3 weeks, I literally didn't leave. And then over the next few weeks, I started going to work like 1 or 2 days just because I was like, I don't want other people, it was more of my scripts and my fears. I didn't want other people to be thinking like, oh, well, Jacqueline just gets to, work from home. So it was more of my own issues with regards to how I'd be perceived in the office. I was one of very few females. And literally I was taking screenshots of how sales and traffic and like my results were had literally doubled during that period of me like half dying. And my boss was asked to give a presentation at a school, and he asked me to put together a PowerPoint slide. And I think that's literally what it hit home to him and me, how much more effective I had been, basically dying at home rather than being in the office, so, which is a funny analogy. But, and so that's really what the 4-hour work week in a nutshell, right, is going to say. If you can become so valuable to your employer, and if you can prove, right, that the work that you do outside of the office is way more effective and productive, it's going to be a no-brainer. So many people will approach it from the aspect of like, well, I want this, and this is what I want. But when you can reframe it in what they want, right? So they're going to be thinking, well, what's in it for me, right? Like you go off and you're living somewhere, well, is it going to be hard because of time zones? Can I trust that you're going to get the work done? But if they already know that you're somebody that no matter where you are and what you do, so if you're somebody that gets, I don't know, to travel for conferences or something, you could start proving that the work that you do is more valuable away. And and it's scary, right? Like I've gotten so clear on this point at this point there. So after this sickness experience, so it was almost 3 months, okay, that I was ill, and I probably went into the office maybe a handful of times in 3 months. And then I literally just woke up one day and I was like, as I was going to bed one night, I realized my visa was coming to an end in the US. I didn't want to renew it because there's a lot of monkey hoops to jump. And I was like, you know what, I'm tired of all these regulations and rules, being able to, like, the way I had to live and work in the States. Like, it was great. I learned, but I was just kind of over all the monkey hoop jumping. And I just decided, you know what, it's been like, I haven't seen my family in 3 years. I've been, living as a foreigner for like the last 9 years. And so I decided, I was going to go home. I was going to go back to South Africa. So now my visa was coming up I was going to have to leave within 4 months. And I spoke to the company and they said, yeah, we want you to work for us from, South Africa. And so I was like, okay, well, they already know that can work, wherever, even when I'm dying, and I do better. Because there's no distractions, right? Like at work. And I was just like, because I was so sick, I was just kind of like focusing on work because it was something I could keep my mind off of things. And so I'd already shown them that. And then they already said, like, we don't want to lose you. You're so valuable. You can work for us from home in South Africa. And so I just then thought to myself, okay, well, I have like 4 or 5 months left of my visa in the States. Why the hell would I go back to the office now that I'm better? And I just went to bed one night. Before I went to bed, it was like clear as day to me, I'm going to move to Hawaii. And I was willing to move there, whether they like whether they were happy about it or not. But what I did is, again, you need to show them what's in it for them. So I had a great relationship with my boss. We'd almost become friends, and he become like a mentor to me at this stage. And I just said, I feel, you know how much better I've done working, from home. Yeah. I'm going to still work for you, South Africa. Yes. We're really excited. I said, what if we did like a test run? I've already worked from home. I really feel like I need to go and live in Hawaii. I'd actually gone there the year before as a graduation present. It's the biggest splurge I'd ever done living in the States, because I lived cheap for many years. Walked in the snow, rode a bicycle, wiped out on my bicycle, waited 3 hours for the bus to go and travel, to go and even grocery shopping. And so I just said, I need to go to Hawaii. I just know I need to, and I want to work for you there. And he just said, okay. And there was a lot of things I needed to make happen in 3 weeks, packing up all my stuff. As I mentioned earlier, that was a pain in the bum. And so I try to do things differently now, not having so much stuff. But the challenges that arise at that point as a location independent is that you have to make sure you have good enough Wi-Fi for the work you're doing, whether it be your clients or your employees. You need to really make that top priority. So I have to sometimes pay a lot more money for a place, or I need to really make that top of mind, and make decisions. I literally make decisions based around Wi-Fi. As you can see today with this webinar, even though I pay a lot of money in South Africa here, and again, like I have Skype calls all the time with clients, no problem. Even coaching calls that I screen share and record. But we've discovered today that hosting, 20 something people on a webinar apparently causes chaos. It could be my laptop. I'm not really sure. But so I have to prioritize that. I have to prioritize like a good laptop, good Wi-Fi, and I plan my life around that. So that's probably one of the biggest, I would say, like challenges, is if you're going to be working from anywhere, that you're going to have to make those concessions. So like when I lived in Thailand, what I did is I literally make my decisions. I go to a place, a couple days, make sure the Wi-Fi is good, because like once a week I'm at least talking to a client on Skype, or different people. I'm having multiple Skype calls. And so I'm also just open with the client as well, and letting them know where I am. But again, at the end of the day, you need to make them the priority, even though you want to live your independent lifestyle. If these people are paying you money and investing in you working with them, then you need to make sure that you are willing to invest and spend more money in certain areas like Wi-Fi. Right now, I still choose to live in South Africa. It allows me to have the lifestyle that I want. I'm not a partier. I don't go to the club. I love waking up, going to yoga, going to Pilates, going shopping, going outside, going to the movies in the middle of the day. And then I work for my clients in the afternoon and in the evenings. So the challenge, of course, is when I've been in other parts of the world, whether it's say Hawaii, where you're living in the past, right? You're behind the clients. You're going to have to sometimes wake up really early for me if there's a meeting or a call. Or like if you're in Asia, I literally would start working at 11 p.m. and work till like 5 in the morning. So this is the like unsexy things that people often don't talk about when they talk about this lifestyle. However, there's nothing more amazing than when I was living in Thailand or Hawaii, waking up and looking out at the beautiful view and where you're living. And even though I didn't take my laptop to the beach, like I was mocking earlier, these people, taking their laptop to the sand, do not do that. You are able to have that lifestyle that I would be like, wake up, and I'd be like, and I'd either do that stuff all day, if I was in Thailand, for example, and then work at night, or when I was in Hawaii, I'd wake up and I'd be like, man, in a couple of hours, I'm going to be like swimming with dolphins, or I'm going to be having like, tacos with my friends. And so there are challenges, but like, where else do you get to do that? When else do you get to make decisions for yourself based on, and have that much freedom? Again, so if like freedom is a key to why you want to do this, then you're going to have to be willing to understand the limitations and the challenges that go along with this. So the other challenge that goes along with, like, let's say digital nomadism, right? So I transferred from this like office employee to this location independent employee. And then when I moved back to South Africa, I was like, okay, well, now I'm in South Africa and I'm invoicing these people. So I guess I have to start a business now, and I'm gonna have to start paying taxes here because previously I've been paying taxes in the US. So with regards to tax law, you need to consult, if you're going to be living all around the world, you're going to need to understand the tax laws based on your residency, meaning where you're based. So the US has very specific rules based on what type of tax you pay, on how long you have or haven't been in the country for that year. But anyway, so I had to start my own business. So I had to just figure these things out. And I've been doing that for the past 3 years. There's many things I wish I had have learned before making some mistakes with running a business like I have. That's for a whole nother talk for another day. But building systems, Remit talks a lot about that. Building systems has been the most important lesson I've learned, but I wasn't really able to build those systems as easily when I was traveling, right? If you have to figure out where you're sleeping, or where you're eating, or, or you're just like in Thailand, you walk on the street and there's everybody trying to hand you a flyer for a different show, a different island cruise, and the beach is calling your name, right? It's kind of difficult to be disciplined. You're going to have to be. And when you're working with clients, right, I prioritize their work above my own business systems. So this last year, when I haven't been traveling as much, I've been using this like downtime, let's say travel downtime, as really building systems into my business, with regards to like accounting systems and onboarding systems and marketing systems. Because it's really difficult to do that when you're on the go. And so if it's something, location independence and being an entrepreneur working from anywhere is something that's important to you, then while you're not traveling would be a really good time to make sure that your systems are set. And then think about the constraints of travel, and like, what if you don't have internet for a couple of days? And what if you're on a plane and airports for days? And so you got to look at those constraints. I don't know if Raphael's still on this call, but he was going to, excuse me, I didn't see he responded, but a friend of mine, Raphael, he said, if you factor and if you understand your constraints, then you can work around them. But if you ignore your constraints, then they're going to end up controlling you. That's my paraphrasing of what Raphael told me about constraints. So you can't just ignore the parts of your life and business or with clients. You actually have to make adjustments and plans for those. Okay, so we've touched on a lot of different things. We've touched on money, we've touched on mobility, we've touched on transitions, and the mindsets, right, of this whole thing is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and the more you can learn to trust yourself, the more you're going to be able to trust yourself in bigger situations. So a challenge I would want to give you is start doing things now in small ways that challenge you. Okay, so what I mean by that is, I bet there's not a lot of people who I'm seeing some questions here coming in. So let me just pause to that. It can be really tricky, right, for eating abroad. So I try and find a grocery store. I'll talk to locals, and I'll try to find a grocery store where I can buy fresh fruits and vegetables. I'll buy yogurts. I'll buy eggs. I've even gone so far as to make friends at restaurants and buy eggs, and I didn't have like a pot or anything in my apartment. And then you take it to the restaurant, and they, like, this was in Thailand, right? And they boiled my eggs for me, and I tried to give them money, and they wouldn't take it. So you definitely need to. And then some apartments, you can pay a little bit more money and have an entire kitchen, pots and pans, like fully furnished, and for not that much more money. Yes, no worries for those of you that have to leave at this point. I'm going to keep going for just a couple more minutes, and then we're going to ask questions. So the other thing you want to take into consideration if you're wanting to work from anywhere, like I think it was Maston Kip, or maybe it was Chris Gilbo. He said, there's so many people that are going to go on these retreats to Bali and Asia and wherever, Hawaii, to like write their book or do, set up some business. And he's like, that's not the worst thing to do, right? He's like, if you want to write a book, you need to go to a boring place, because if you're going to be in Bali, you're not going to be wanting to sit at your computer, staring at your screen, writing a book. Now, if you're doing it for the purpose of getting inspiration, that's a different story. Okay, so if you need to travel for ideas, or if you want to travel and get ideas, then yes, of course, there's some examples of people who have done that. Okay, last but not least, we're moving on to sacrifices and opportunities. So many people will say to me, Jacqueline, you're so lucky. Oh, you're so lucky you get to travel, and you're so lucky you get to go there. And oh man, you're so lucky. As you can hear from the tone of my voice, I am definitely mocking that, because when you've done anything worthwhile in life, you realize that so lucky is just a script saying that, oh, that's just because they're lucky that they have that. But I want you to know that you can create the same lifestyle if it's something that's really important to you. And so sometimes I make a joke when people say, oh, did you win the lotto or whatever? I say, no, I just don't buy the same shit that you buy. So there's many sacrifices that I've had to make along this journey, right? I mentioned earlier, I had a bicycle for like the better part of my college years and walked in the snow. I had the cheapest cell phone. I didn't have a smartphone until maybe a year and a half ago. And bought my clothes from Goodwill, or got given stuff. And I was really lucky because a lot of people were really, really kind and good. I would say the other big thing is be a good person to people, be a friend. Like I had so many roommates or people that I was, I went with no expectations. I was just friends with them. And then they'd invite me home for Thanksgivings or on trips and whatever, and they wouldn't let me pay, or they invite me to come to their town. And so if you're going to be abroad, make friends with people. You're going to get so many opportunities. They're going to invite you to come, go with them to a place, or they're going to show you, people love to show you their culture and their city and their towns. Go with it. Like I've offered for so many people, and nobody's ever taken me up on, very few people have taken me up on coming to South Africa. So let's see if there's anything else. Again, don't be stupid, take calculated risks, but do take risks. I've stayed in really cheap places and then gone and gate crashed the fancy hotel's pool. Not necessarily recommending that. And so, oh yes, so I wanted to leave you guys with this before I get to last questions, is, give me 1 second. I want to give you a challenge. Just start exploring in your own city. Get in your car and start driving, not knowing where you're going, because that'll start help you getting comfortable with going places where you haven't been or you don't know. That is a challenge, but if you can start doing that locally, you're going to have less of a problem when you start doing this internationally. Too many people try to do this, go abroad and do this whole uncertainty thing, and they've never even done it locally. Or spend an entire day with no plans, get in your car and just go and stop at a new place, try a new thing, eat at a new restaurant. And then on the flip side, do something touristy in your city. Too many people, they want to go abroad to do something touristy, but then they haven't even done things in their own town. And I'm going to send you guys, as I said, a link to some of the best tools I have. There's one there that you can actually put a flight tracker, a price tracker. So let's say your dream is to go to Paris, or your dream is to go to come to Cape Town, or to go to Thailand. You can actually put your location, put the city you want to go in, look at the price, and then put an alert via email, so that as soon as that flight becomes that price, you'll get an email. So these are some of the challenges I want to leave you with. I'll send it in an email, and that's some of the information that I prepared for you today. Thanks for sticking with us. If anybody wants to send a question through in the chat that's super specific, that you feel like it would be valuable to other people, send that now, and I will send that through. And let's see here if anybody sends anything through here. I already spoke to the question of eating healthy abroad. Yes, I've stayed in hostels. Nice thing about hostels actually is that often they have a kitchen, and the kitchen will, you can go to the grocery store and make your own food. So that's really awesome. Hotels, I don't often stay in hotels because they tend to be a lot more expensive. What other questions do we have here? Jesse, do we have any other questions that are outstanding in the comments? Let's see here. Flight insurance. Okay, so this is what I'd suggest. Yes, talk to a travel agent. So if you're under a certain age, often like if you're under 30 now, I just turned 30, so this is going to be a bit trickier in the future, but they will allow you to have a youth fare. So youth fares mean that they'll allow you to change a flight without a extra charge. And so those are definitely things you want to find out. You want to either read if you're booking a flight online, you want to read about this. And if you have, let's see, if you miss a flight, that's happened once before, and I literally had to spend 24 hours in New York airport the 23rd of December, and hope and pray that they put me on the next flight. That was with regards to a kind of act of God, as they claimed, weather related, and they weren't able to, the flight actually left. The flight time changed between when I booked it and when it actually flew, and I didn't update. So that would be another piece of advice. Like, make sure you double check your flight, especially if you're booking flights like months in advance. You want to do that. And then, so yeah, I just sat in the airport for like 24 hours. Delta wouldn't even give us like a meal ticket because they claimed it was weather and act of God. And so I made a friend in the airport, and we like pretty much slept on the cold floor, and waited in line, until the next day, and that we, hoped and prayed they would let us on, and they did. So insurance, I believe that the travel insurance I'm going to send you, if something happens with regards to your health, and you have to miss a flight. So that happened to me in a way where I was supposed to be flying like to Singapore, and then Bali, and then Australia, and then Mauritius when I got injured. And so when that happened, I let my travel insurance know. They just booked me a completely separate ticket home because of that. So let's see, how do I manage the time when you're working abroad? Like, how do you find a balance between wanting to explore? Okay, so I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Sorry if I mispronounced this, Vaishno. What you need to do is you need to be disciplined, right? So you can't 24/7 play. But of course, many people know and understand that you don't work 24/7, and that you don't often work on weekends. So that's going to come down to the boundaries and things that you have with your clients or employer, that you make time for that. And like I said, right now my lifestyle is I have the mornings completely to myself, and I only work in the afternoons and evenings, and so I get to do whatever I want. But if there's an evening I want to go out, you better know that I'm planning that. And so I live very strictly from a calendar. I live very strictly with plans I make. I plan on like Sundays for the week. I plan that stuff in. So if you're just going to become a workaholic and not plan that stuff in, of course, or take on too many clients or take on too many projects. So that's something you definitely need to take a look at. Let's see, I hope I answered your question. If not, feel free to pop me an email. Maria, one of the things I struggle with is saving up for long-term vacation so I can spend all my time, sightseeing versus living abroad while working. Do you still feel you're able to see and do you still feel like you were able to see or do everything you wanted? Okay, great question, Maria. So there have been times when I've had to work a lot on trips, and there have been times when I just took months off. I will say that the time that I didn't work for like 2 or 3 months and I lived on savings, I'm the type of person that enjoys work and enjoys creating new things. So you actually find yourself like sometimes getting bored if you're going to not work the whole time. Although when I was 2.5 months in Europe, I was traveling a lot, although we were doing research at the same time. So I feel like it's completely worth it to spend some time in another country even if you're not going to be, even if you're going to be working some of that time, right? So for me, I get bored. I think even Tim Ferriss has a quote where he says, like, for most people, if they're not doing something of meaning with their life, like, they're just going to get bored. So you can do alternation. I know that there's some people, like somebody I follow, Paul Jarvis and others, they'll work for like 9 months of a year, and then they decide, like, no matter what, like, I'm taking these months off. And so it's nice, definitely nice. You know, I have a goal to like go and walk the Camino. I might do it next year, and that's like a 35 days where I probably can't do client work. And so I'm already thinking now, I'm planning ahead. Okay, like if I want to be able to walk the Camino for 35 days and not do work and have everything sorted, I have some long-term clients. So what am I going to do? I'm going to need to start preparing them now, letting them know, you know, I'm not going to be available for that month. Or saying, look, I'm going to be checking in because I still want to keep those relationships. I don't want them to go and find another, you know, coach or marketer or whatever. And so you need to plan around that. And as far as savings, you know, a lot of people think, like, oh, you need all this money. I lived on like $5,000 of savings in over a 4-month period in Australia and Asia last year. Now, it might sound like a lot, but when you break it up, what it is over the few months, is it's not that much money. It's less probably than most of you are spending on an average month, you know, at your place, right? But that's because I've created a lifestyle where I'm not like paying for a car while I'm traveling still, and I'm not having to pay all this insurance, and I'm not having, other than the traveler's insurance, that's kind of an extra. I'm not having to do all these other things and pay for all these other things that are keeping me bound or keeping me, you know, bleeding money in other directions. So I hope that answered your question, Maria. If you want to ask me more specifically, feel free to pop me an email, and we can always have a quick Skype chat or something. If there's any more questions, I know Jesse has to get on his way, and we've been on here for almost 2 hours now, so it's at least 30 minutes longer than I planned because of tech difficulties. Thank you so much, Chris, and Vaishna, and Maria, and Angelica, and all of you guys who participated, asked questions, Pri, Krill, Angelina, Gary, thanks for hanging in there, being troopers, and I really hope that this was super valuable for you. I'm going to send you guys I'm going to have to figure out after I get off this how I'm going to approach the fact that this was quite terrible in the tech side, and maybe I have a pre-recording audio that I did as actually in planning this, so maybe I'll send that out. But let me just put my thoughts together and send you something. What I'm going to do now, though, is send you a link to the survey, a post survey, and also a link to all the resources that I promised. So yeah, Jesse's got to go. I've got to get running as well. So I'm sure many of you have things to do. Pop me an email. Let me know if there's more of a specific question you'd like handled. I'll send you the resources and things I promised. And you guys are awesome. Thanks for sticking in there and being with me on this first time. It definitely was nerve-wracking, scary, and then went a lot worse at the beginning than planned. But we hung in there and we made it work, right? So I'm going to send you the survey. I'm just going to want to know what, it's a 3-question survey. What is the biggest thing you learned today, and what did you enjoy the most? So thank you guys. Awesome. Over and out here from sunny South Africa, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.